Hi, everyone, and welcome to Jehovah Boy. I'm your host, Doug Smith, and this is the podcast all about struggle, hardship, trauma, bad shit, overcoming it, channeling it into your creativity without letting it define you. My guest today is comedian and author Zach Zimmerman. Zach just published a fantastic new book called Is It Hot in Here, or Am I Suffering for All Eternity for the Sins I Committed on Earth? I just finished listening to the audiobook, which he narrates, does a fantastic job of, and I cannot recommend this book enough. It is a collection of essays and short stories, many of them personal, some of them less so, but they all, for the most part, harken back to his formative years as a Southern Baptist and experiences in his life that are a direct result of that very upbringing. We trade war stories, for sure. We were both raised with a similar level of guilt, shame, fear, but Zach had the added privilege of having to deny and repress his sexuality for quite some time. I, too, had to deny and repress my sexuality, but heterosexuality, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you only have to keep under wraps until marriage, whereas homosexuality, you take to the grave with you. Or you come out, you're ousted from the church, and you got to start a new life. So I'll let you figure out what Zach opted for. But extremist Christian religions like Southern Baptists and Jehovah's Witnesses are typically extremely anti-gay, which I'm sure is no surprise to you. Jehovah's Witnesses have not changed in their anti-gay stance for nearly 100 years. In fact, I'd say doubled down on it. They were ousted a couple years ago when a video surfaced online that they produced themselves. They have quite a impressive production studio at their headquarters where they are producing animated videos because they firmly believe in indoctrinating and brainwashing young members at a very early age. So they gotta make this slick shit that they can show to the kids and rope them in. So they have these recurring characters. Caleb and Sophia, they have a whole series where the indoctrination is channeled through the story of these two characters. And it's very, like I said, extremely impressive. Pixar-level animation style. Real slick shit. And this girl, Sophia, comes home from school with a family portrait that she drew. And she shows her mom, and she says, this other girl in my class, she drew her family portrait, and she has two mommies. But the teacher says, it doesn't matter who your parents are as long as they love each other. And this girl's mom is like, well, people have different ideas of what an appropriate relationship is, but what really matters is what Jehovah thinks. And then she begins to indoctrinate this girl into the homophobic ways of the witness organization. And basically says, if so-and-so's moms want to enter the kingdom of heaven or live in a paradise earth, they better, stop eating each other's muff and get with the program. So it's hilariously horrifying that they are indoctrinating these kids at such a young age. It's especially hilarious because all religions, I've come to realize, have been able to have my naivete lifted after many years of brainwashing done to me. I've come to learn that all religions, like most everything else in this world, are profit-driven. And if Jehovah's Witnesses were to expand their parameters for who they allowed into the church, and say, hey, you know what? The Bible was written a long time ago. We've come to an understanding that people of all sexual orientations are equal and welcome into the faith. They would exponentially increase their earning potential. And the thing is, Jehovah's Witnesses are, they're entirely funded on donations. It is a donation-funded organization, and there's a lot of wealthy gays out there. Just saying, if they want to build some new kingdom halls, they might have to take one on the chin. They might have to take a hot load to the chin and embrace the gays. But they don't, and sadly, I have had to witness, pun intended, multiple multiple gay men live a lie, repress their sexuality, and marry women and go through life as seemingly heterosexual men just to maintain their good standing with Jehovah. There were 2 guys in my congregation when I was growing up who were way too fashion savvy to be heterosexual, and they were both extremely talented in their chosen fields. One of them did window displays for Saks Fifth Avenue, which is an extremely high-profile job. All the latest fashions of the season are on display in these windows in a really beautiful, ornate, thoughtful way. It's an extremely competitive field, and he was doing these window designs for one of the biggest department stores in the world. Windows that are passed by thousands of passers-by per day. Extremely high-profile position. Very talented guy. And this other guy was a very competent carpenter, and he was into furniture restoration, very skilled in both fields. And these 2 guys combined forces and started a home interiors company called, wait for it, Backdoor Farms. That's right, folks. Backdoor Farms. Right there, hiding in plain sight. It's almost like they wanted to get caught. Only Jehovah knows what they were doing behind closed back doors. Anyway, it was very tragic and sad to see these guys living a lie, doing what they thought was the right thing, all in a false hope of a future in the paradise earth. So anyway, it's always encouraging to talk to someone like Zach, who was raised with that same level of indoctrination, being told that homosexuality is a sin, and knowing that it was obviously very difficult for him to break free, come out, be met with that level of disappointment and discouragement from his friends and family, but know that he is now living his truth, and he's made a fantastic career of leaning into it full throttle. His stand-up is hilarious. This book is amazing. And without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Zach Zimmerman.
This is Jehovah's Day.
Well, congrats on the book, by the way. I just finished. I wish I could say I read it, because I've been actually trying to read books, like flip pages and, put words together, with my eyes and brain, rather than just do audiobooks.
Wow, you're definitely not a master of language. It's definitely not. I've been trying to do book in the reading time.
I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
Jenny, books are. I wish I was more of a reader. I'm not. I want to read more too. Like, we're on the same journey in that way. They say to be a writer, you have to read more. And so I think I need to be reading more than I am.
Well, because you can't multitask when you're actually sitting and reading a book.
That's the
thing.
audiobook. You can get away with it, which there's debate on whether that's actually reading or not. But
it's not. That's why I can't even say I read your book. I listened to your monologue.
Listen to it!
Which was very enjoyable.
I was blown away by how many people are like, is there an audiobook? When's the audiobook? Like, we want the audiobook. And I'm just like, you're so lazy. Or not lazy, that's wrong, because I do have some blind fans who were like, is there an audiobook? I literally can't read your book. And so I was like, oh, yeah, there will be one. So it is more accessible, an audiobook. But they say psychologically that holding a book in your hand, even more so than like a Kindle or whatever, and feeling the weight changing from left to right or right to left, like, does something to your brain where you're like, oh, this is different. We're growing. Like, I'm achieving something. I finished a book.
Yeah, you feel like you've accomplished something.
And to have written one, you kind of feel the same, because now I have this little like physical object. Like, I love comedy, but it can be so ephemeral. Even if you put out like a great set or a special, you don't get to like hold something in your hand unless you like print off pictures from it or something.
Or you have your phone with your collection of Instagram reels. But yeah, I know what you mean. It slips away.
Not the same. The reels, the Instagram server, the meta servers are going to crash in a couple years and we'll have nothing left.
I hope so. I can't wait. That's my only reason for staying alive.
Burn it down.
Hoping there's a great, a massive revolution against all things tech.
Did you watch the NBC show Revolution by chance?
No.
It was bad. I think it was a season or two. Or bad. It's good. I like shitty sci-fi shows that last like a season or two. But it was about a big blackout that like eliminates all the tech in all the world. And then we kind of return to this like, it felt like Civil War era. I don't know. There were just like lots of horses and armies and stuff. And then there was something supernatural. It lasted 2 seasons, I think.
I don't know if I'm going to watch it because I don't want to question our friendship, which is another thing you mentioned in your book. What chapter was that where you said having a friend recommend a series that changed their life, and then you watch it and it's just okay, and it makes you question your friendship? Am I doing it justice?
Yeah, I feel like that happens so often when someone's like, "Oh my God, you have to watch this," and then it's just okay. And then you are like, do I trust this person and their taste their taste level? Yeah. But you're allowed to be friends with people that don't like the stuff you like. Maybe. It definitely makes it easier. I love when you find someone who shares your niche interests. Like, yes, everyone like coming themselves over Succession right now, like is part of some club that feels exclusive, but it's actually not. Like that's a very mainstream popular show. And it's a great show. But like when you find someone who's like watched The 100, this like sci-fi show from forever ago, or when you find a Survivor fan, and I can talk to like somebody who's been watching Survivor, that feels like you're uncovering some like very cool like we have something in common. Which is, now I'm just preaching. It's very exciting that there's lots of shows and streaming platforms and we're getting diverse voices and like telling untold stories, but at the same time there's something lost when everyone's not watching the same show in terms of like shared morals and community building. Like an old guy in the park talked to me the other day and he was naming some shows he'd watched and I hadn't watched any of those shows, and so we just had fewer reference points than we might have 50 years ago where we're talking about Beaver or something. Not to be
I was going to say,
Republican.
Was he dropping the Honeymooners? That's probably the last thing he watched.
Honeymooners. He had watched Daisy Jones and the Six, which I haven't seen yet. But he seemed up on his stuff.
So I finished the book like 10 minutes before we started this interview. I didn't think that was my goal, was to actually complete it.
What's fresh?
And I loved it. I mean, I took copious amounts of notes.
I took notes on the book?
I did.
Just enjoy the book.
Well, because I want to ask you about specific passages. One thing that really struck a chord with me, which I can't wait to relate to my wife, in the chapter 7 New Sins and Tortures 2, sampling 3 ice creams at the ice cream shop and not ordering any of them. She fucking does that.
She does that. She just wanted a little taste.
It's made me question love.
Evil.
Her. It is. I'm such a people pleaser. It's like, if you do that, even if you don't want it, just give them $7 and throw it in the trash. You know, like,
yes,
that's not their job to just supply you with free little wooden spoons of ice cream.
I think you do need to leave her. How long have y'all been together? It's not serious or anything, is it?
No,
you're kind of just
only
hanging
one
out.
Kid. It's no big deal.
Yeah, one kid. They give those away. That's a sunk cost. Your child's a sunk cost. You can't factor that in.
2 decades in a child is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
That's next.
I need a more principled person.
I'm glad you're resonating with like the little humor lists. That's surprising given your religious trauma. Or maybe you're just softening me up with like, oh, this was so funny and that was so funny.
I'm softening you up. Yeah. Well, yes, because there were some very heavy moments that really resonated with me too. But let's start at ground zero. So you were raised in, was it Roanoke, Virginia?
Roanoke, Virginia.
Southern
Tiny little
Baptist.
town, Southern Baptist.
Okay.
Dad was a assistant pastor, and mom waited tables. They met when he was like a manager at that restaurant that she worked at too, and they fell madly in love and had 4 little kids and told them all about their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
So they are still, I'm assuming, very active in the church.
That's what's so strange, and I don't know if everyone has this situation. They still have their beliefs, but I couldn't tell you the last time they went to a church.
Wow.
Like, they fiercely believe everything they believe and watch all the Fox News and read their Bibles, but they don't go to church. I think my dad has, like, social anxiety, but to me, it's just like, oh, you have all the worst parts of a religion, just all the, like, nasty supernatural beliefs and none of the, like, community or friendship or potlucks or, like, game nights. You're just like, it's just you alone in bed talking to God.
Right. They might as well just join AA.
Yeah. They never drank. Both their dads were alcoholics, and then they never drank. So I joke that I'm the swing vote. I have, like, the potential to go one way or the other.
So your dad was a pastor as well, correct?
Yeah.
And that was his, like, main profession, or did he have another side job or what?
I guess it would be more of like a hobby, but he was a mechanic for the longest time, and then would preach, assistant pastor. And then when they moved cities, he started driving a school bus, and now he's like semi-retired, but is driving a timeshare shuttle. So he, like, carts people from their free stay at the timeshare to the sales office where they tell you, if you love your family, you're going to buy all these points to get into the timeshare business. And he, like, carts them back and forth and warns them.
Good for him. So he is doing the Lord's work.
He's doing the Lord's work. I feel like I haven't totally dug that deep into it, but I think he was, like, passed over to become a official pastor, or, like, the head pastor of that church was like, oh, I can't ordain you until you have your own church or something, and that kind of hurt him in a way where he kind of dialed down that part of things. He's a very sensitive man.
Piece of cake. Anybody can just have their own church.
You just gotta have your own church. Though comedy isn't unlike a church, building a little cult, a little community, a little...
I know, dude. I think about that all the time. That I was, in the truest sense of the word, a follower, and I left a cult, and now I am trying to amass my own following. It's nuts. It's nuts.
It's so, Once you lean into it, it becomes a little more fun, or because everyone's so hungry for belonging. I just debuted what I call my fans now, which is, like, an interesting thing. Someone a year ago DM'd me like, oh my God, I love your stuff. I'm such a Zimmermaniac. And I was like, well, this is weird. That's weird. That's a weird thing to say. But then I started, like, a week ago calling people Zimmermaniacs. And I think they kind of like it, or, like, there's some sub-dom thing at play. People like, all right, Zimmermaniacs, go like my reel. All right.
Do it now or I'll stomp your balls with a pair of stilettos.
They love it. I wish I had... Some comics have an antagonistic relationship with their fans, or, like, I fucking hate you all. But I genuinely, like, love them. And it's also weird to have fans. Like, I just did the book tour, and so I found people in different cities that, like, identify as fans, and were doing fan-like things. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I actually love you guys. Like, I get why artists say, like, I'd be nowhere without my fans, or they send out that love, because you do feel kind of, like, propped up by them, or they're like, I loved your book. Oh my goodness. Can't wait for the next one. That's like, oh, maybe I should write a next one.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're the ones making it happen.
I wonder if Jesus felt that way, or Joseph Smith, or, like, did his followers prop him up?
As he's on the cross, he's like, make sure to subscribe.
Like, follow. That's a New Yorker cartoon if I ever heard one.
Yeah,
I
right?
learned about your tradition in a book my dad had growing up called The Kingdom of the Cults.
Okay.
You were a cult. Catholicism was a cult. Seventh-day Adventists were a cult. But then I studied religion in college, and cult as a word doesn't have like a formal definition. It says more about the person using it. If you call something a cult, you're like, oh, that's the bad version of this. They've perverted it. They're wrong. They're manipulating or something. But we're good. The church is good. The main place is good. The cult is bad.
Do you don't because you mentioned some sci-fi shit about Southern Baptists. What is the give me a little like condensed version of their belief system? Is it basically kind of like Catholicism to the 10th power? Is it very different? Really leaning into the whole element of eternal hellfire for wrongdoing, or give me a little crash course.
100%. So there was a man named Jesus of Nazareth who lived and died and was killed by the Romans. We know that for sure. Crucified. And then whether or not he rose again is the origin of sort of Christianity. But the Catholics, the Protestants formed during the Protestant Reformation when Martin Luther was like, hey, Catholic Church, like what you built is great, but it's also corrupt because you're selling indulgences so people can get into heaven. Like your priest is mediating the relationship between humans and God, and you're taking money from people, and that's evil. And so he wrote his 95 Theses and stuck them on the door of the Catholic Church and started Protestantism, which is still under Christianity, but it proclaims a more direct connection to God, that each individual can be connected to God in some certain way. Both Protestants and Catholics believe, in the resurrection, the Virgin Mary. There's more kind of like Mary iconography in Catholicism. Protestants are more little less Mary worship. But a key difference is the crucifix. So if you look in a Catholic church, Jesus is still on the cross, or I was taught this. If you go to a Protestant church, the cross is empty because Jesus is like born again, and we all can be that. But Protestants gave way to fundamentalists at the turn of the 20th century, which started taking the Bible super literally. Like, for the longest time, I don't think anyone really thought there was one man named Adam and one woman named Eve and a snake. And that was sort of all just seen as this, like, origin story for the universe and that communicates certain ideals. But fundamentalists started being like, nope, 7 literal days doesn't stand for 100 years or 1,000. God created the earth. They start picking and choosing parts of the Bible to take like hyper literally. And then hell's always been there that's not true. I started reading a book about a brief history of hell, or heaven and hell. And hell didn't always exist. It started to exist as a way to like deter people from doing certain things and manipulating behavior on earth. But I feel like when I was coming of age in the 90s, hell was very intense in fundamentalist circles. Like
Very, very trendy, very fashionable.
Yeah. In the pandemic, I watched Hell's heyday. In the pandemic, I watched my old church's like YouTube sermons because they were live streaming them. And even the pastor was talking about how, yeah, we were maybe a little too heavy on hell back then. I think it hurt recruitment to be so hard on hell rather than like God's love, like, which is more motivating, like a fear of hell or a love of joy. That was me talking a lot, but my parents definitely pushed the hell narrative because they didn't want their little kid to go to hell, which is an admirable thing if you're sort of operating in that game. But you can cause a lot of harm when you try to save somebody from a fire that doesn't exist.
Sure. Well, I think the big parallel between your upbringing and mine is just extreme fear mongering. And Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in hell, but they believe in Armageddon. So it's, impending Judgment Day,
Ooh, we got some Armageddon. What happens on Judgment Day?
Everybody who's a non-believer, everybody who hasn't accepted the truth, as they call it, will be obliterated. So, 99.9% of the population. Yeah.
There's no afterlife? You just kind of get blown up?
So if, say I was Jehovah's Witness currently right now, okay, and Armageddon was to strike this afternoon, you and George, if we were doing this call and Armageddon were to strike, I would watch you guys just be incinerated before my very eyes. Fireballs would crash through your roof, and you would just, turn to ash. And I would be sitting here with, rubble falling down around me, but I would somehow miraculously stay in a preserved physical, mental state, and I would walk out my door into a barren wasteland where the earth was just a post-apocalyptic hellscape, and then all the survivor, I don't know exactly how the logistics of this work out, but the earth is then going to be transformed into a paradise the way God originally created it, where everything is restored to a thing of perfect beauty, and man and beast live as one in perfect harmony forever. And then all your dead loved ones, so like only those that were Jehovah's Witnesses. So my grandparents, nope, they're staying dead. My mom, who was a Jehovah's Witness until the day she died, she will be resurrected. So I'd be reunited with my mother and all other Jehovah's Witnesses who remained faithful until the very end. And then we would all live in harmony on this paradise earth forever and ever. And then certain Jehovah's Witnesses that received a divine calling before their death, they will not be resurrected to this paradise earth. They will be resurrected to rule with Jesus in heaven over the great crowd of people that live on this paradise earth.
I'm in.
You're in? Sounds pretty
Checks
good.
out.
Huh?
Wait, there's a heaven, but everybody goes to the heaven? You have to stay on earth and clean up the mess?
There's no mention of cleanup. I don't think that's Jehovah's job. There's no mention of cleanup. We just get to reap the rewards. I imagine the...
What's the timeline? Armageddon strikes and then it's a paradise instantly?
It kind of. That's what I was just kind of realizing as I was explaining this to you. It's basically, it was kind of explained as like snap of the fingers. It's just transformed. That's why I tell people it's the sci-fi element of things. When people really like to dog on Scientology, and it's like once you break down the principles of Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like it's the same shit. It's not any less crazy at all.
And we have our own, I forget which sect claims it, but I assume you're familiar with the rapture, or how my former tradition approaches the end of days.
Sure.
There's a rapture of all the believers. They get to go to heaven, right? And then everyone else
that are
left on earth and punished over a 7-year tribulation of a variety of pests and antichrists and fires, and then Jesus comes down, kills the antichrist, reigns on earth for 1,000 years, then throws Satan into the lake of fire, and everybody can go to heaven.
Okay.
It is very sci-fi. That's probably why I like sci-fi a little bit, because I love like epic stories of good versus evil and twists. And
that's so funny, because that's exactly why I hate sci-fi. It's like I fucking lived it, so I'd like to enjoy the real world. Thank you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I have no use for sci-fi at all. Not at all. It's like no. I was already. My imagination was already stretched beyond its capability growing up. So
right.
I like things that are very much rooted in reality. But I was realizing that you have the threat of hell when you die, right? but there's no like. It's interesting because Jehovah's Witnesses, like, they don't believe in hell. So, like, if you were to die, it's just your final resting place. You go into the ground and that's it. There's no hope for the future. Whereas Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like you'll either be punished in the future or you will be have a eternal life of perfection in the future. But there's no threat of like if you you'll be punished. Does that make sense? Like if you Zach were to die now as a non-believer in Jehovah's Witnesses, there would be no real punishment. The only punishment would be that you wouldn't get resurrected, but you wouldn't go to hell. There is no hellfire. You wouldn't be tortured for all eternity.
What do I have to do to be a Jehovah's Witness?
Go to meetings 3 times a week, knock on doors,
not celebrate my birthday,
not celebrate any holidays.
Or say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Say the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, you know your
which
shit.
y'all were probably right on that one. We had one Jehovah's Witness in my class. You got that one right.
I think about it. I think if I was to go to school now and just stand there with my arms at my side, people would be like, this guy's fucking badass.
Yeah.
look at Colin Kaepernick over here taking a knee.
And you're like, no, I just want to watch my friends get obliterated for paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fucking involved if you want to be.
Y'all go door to door? I know Mormons do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. There was a guy who came to my door as a kid, and I like battled him in theological debate, and I felt a little bad for him because he got this like 13-year-old who was. It's like, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this, sir?
So this was a grown man. Was he Jehovah's Witness?
Oh, yeah. Or a Mormon. He was by himself, though. Do y'all travel in pairs the way the Mormons do?
We travel in pairs, but we also do some solo missions.
Maybe it was a Jehovah's Witness then.
Could have been. They look the same, like shitty, like Kmart button down with a clip-on tie. They look presentable, but very much impoverished at the same time.
Impoverished. Do y'all have headquarters?
Oh,
somewhere?
Yeah. So the world headquarters used to be in Brooklyn. How long have you been living in New York for?
6 years now.
6 years. Okay. So they moved, I want to say, maybe 12, 15 years ago. The world headquarters used to be in Dumbo. So right as you came over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, wow.
A huge standing sign. Like, you remember the Ken Tile Floors sign when you come over come out of the tunnel on the F train? That big, like almost looks like the Hollywood sign, like individual letters on placard. It was like that, the watchtower. And then there was a banner underneath that said, read God's word, the Bible daily. And they had about 6 or 7 entire city blocks in Dumbo. Prime fucking real estate that they bought up in the early 80s. And that was their world headquarters where they had a printing press. That's where they printed all their publications.
Watchtower is the name of a publication of yours, right?
Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is the name of their, if their corporation. And so they were sitting on prime real estate that they bought for next to nothing in the early 80s. And it was basically like a commune where Jehovah's Witnesses would go and live there. They receive, free room and board in exchange for their services. So like, they have doctors on staff. They have lawyers on staff. They have an art department that does the paintings for all their publications. And I was a fine artist growing up, so that was my mom's dream for me. That's why she was always encouraging of my artistic endeavors, was to go and live at Brooklyn Bethel, they call it, and be in the art department doing paintings, doing illustrations for their publications. So they sold it. Like I said, 12, 15 years ago I'm tempted to, George, maybe you can do a quick Goog and let me know the exact, it's an astronomical amount. And they were able to buy up a new world headquarters in Warwick, New York, and they have this massive estate now. And it's a money-making enterprise. And I didn't really realize that growing up, but now I know that there's like 6 old white dudes that are at the top that all the money is getting funneled to. So these dudes are multimillionaires, and all the plebeian Jehovah's Witnesses are just funneling all their meager earnings from whatever job that they have up the ladder to these guys.
We have no.
Sorry to
What
interrupt.
is it?
It says the Jehovah's Witnesses are selling off their Watchtower headquarters in Brooklyn, New York for more than $1 billion.
Oh my
I
God.
thought, yep. I didn't want to drop the B word, but I was like, I'm pretty sure.
The B word. That is bitchin'. That is a bitchin' amount of money.
Yeah. Is that nuts? $1 billion.
And it was all probably a non-profit. We're so,
yeah.
I mean, Protestants have no lack of those types of people. Y'all are just one organization. We have like Saddleback Church and Joel Osteen's church and all of these like wealth gospel, prosperity gospel people who are just like, Jesus wants you to be a millionaire on earth. There's acres of diamonds in your backyard. Like, there's no need to help other people. You're owed all this money on earth. And it's good. That means God's shining on you when you get rich on earth.
Wow. But
which is so different than like helping other people or serving others.
Yes, for sure. But you had the threat of eternal hellfire instilled in you from a young age. And on top of that, even if you're, just a regular schmo who has the ability to sin otherwise, you were also told that homosexuality was a punishable offense, right? Homosexuality is a sin. So you had to keep that.
100%.
You had to keep that close to the vet. When did you know, and how did your story about coming out to your mom, by the way, is great too. But when did you know, and how long were you sitting on it for?
I, in a lot of ways, was a late bloomer in that I didn't really experience queer desire, to my knowledge, until college. Like, I joke that maybe there just weren't any hot guys in Roanoke. Or maybe it was just so off the table psychologically for me that I never even was like considering it. But I was sort of, I left clues, like I wanted to be a cheerleader, and I did lots of theater, and I sat at the girls' table, but yeah, it wasn't really until college, and then over the course of those 4 years, I got my first blowjob, gave my first blowjob. A friend wrote me a letter where she's like, "You're gay," and I was like, "What? No, I'm not." She's like, "No, you are," and just being exposed to other people, it was still not as accepted. Like, there were some out people on campus and stuff, but I don't think it was maybe what it would be like today. People are still figuring out who they are. And I thought I had relayed. I'm pretty open, an open book and an oversharer by kind of nature. And so I thought I had mentioned it to my mom before. She likes to say I love you unconditionally all the time. And so I thought she was being subtle and knew the condition. Also, they say mothers know. And so for her, maybe she just was so in denial that she was never entertaining that world for me. But then even after college, I was still making sense of things and testing the waters. It wasn't I know who I am and now I'm loud and proud. There was a lot of internalized homophobia buried deep in that you sort of as the culture shifted over the past decade, it definitely has helped myself. And as I found my tribe and all that good stuff, or my family, chosen family.
Well, I was gonna say you're a '90s kid too. When I would say homophobia was perhaps at its peak,
Peak homophobia,
right? I mean, it was rampant.
It's coming back. It feels like the playbook is the exact same. The gay agenda. They're converting our kids.
Yeah.
We just need another I guess monkeypox could have been the disease, but it wasn't on par with HIV. But I think we're watching trans people become the scapegoat of the right in the next like election, and culturally the way that like gay people were in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, yeah. But growing up when you did in the 90s in Roanoke, Virginia, of all places, as a Southern Baptist, were you subject to a lot of bullying? Were there other gay kids that you knew, that you were aware of growing up, like in middle school, high school? Did you keep it close to the vest? What was that like navigating through school?
There was one bi guy in high school, I remember, and that was like shocking. I got bullied in middle school a little, or just like other kids would call me like faggot or whatever. But I was lucky, I think, in that I was like in the smart kid classes, and it was like okay to be a total nerd, and we were like separated from everyone and not really picked on, fortunately. And then I just rode the like academics wave. It's been funny reconnecting with a lot of the other like very good kids in school, and they ended up all being like queer too. I think when someone's like really good at school, they're trying to escape.
Yeah.
Like they're like, let me get these A's because that's my passport out of this like environment that I'm in right now.
Right. Well, I imagine just like you were able to mop the floor with the guy that came to your door talking about religion, I imagine that you are a bright enough kid growing up that anybody that was to throw any slurs your way, you were able to just obliterate them with their meatheadedness and use that against them.
Well, I was because I was a little Republican, or
Oh,
I was
yeah?
I was a little conservative. I like was preaching the gospel up until like 17, 18. So like,
You agree with them? You're like, yeah, I am one of those.
right. But I was such a little, goody two shoes and doing, or not even goody, in hindsight, bad. I was such a troublemaker in terms of like conservative talking points in middle school and high school.
Yeah.
Stuff I do not believe now, but believed then.
Right. Well, it's what you were surrounded by, right? You were not, you know, your life here in New York is a complete 180 from what you grew up with. So you, I wanted to, like I said, I jotted down a couple of things that really stood out to me. So you grew up with like similar to me, a lot of fear mongering, a lot of terror that you were going to be punished for any sort of sinful ways. So one thing that really resonated with me was you have a passage, and pardon me if I do any disservice by quoting this directly, but when you're talking about catastrophizing things, a small headache is a brain tumor. And then you talk about, my therapist calls it the old place, where we go when our old familiar ways of thinking take over. Over the years, I've learned to describe mine, a place of fear, catastrophizing, black and white thinking, hypochondria, obsessive thoughts. I've learned that a childhood afraid of an eternity of damnation built pathways in my mind, a decades-long bedrock for anxiety, fear, and shame. You're like, did I write that?
I know. It's like, oh my God.
That's hardcore, man. That really resonated with me. I've been struggling with that since I left. I've been out 20 years, and it's still very, very deep-rooted in me.
The solace or the goal I found, I realized it's never going to go away, but my therapist and I, like, the trick is to, instead of spending a day there or an hour there, just spend like 3 seconds there, like catching yourself, like, oh, that's where that thought came from. Or like, I'm not going to invest or spend too long in the old place that he calls it. Let me just pop right back out. Because it'll never like go away. There's no balm or magic pill or secret to like unlearn what you learned first.
Yeah. And I imagine it helps to like actually assign a name to it rather than just feel like, oh my God, I'm succumbing to this fear and paranoia. It's like, how could you not when that was so deeply ingrained in you? Like, It
the
is.
other
It's
thing he
just going
does,
back to this old way of thinking.
he gave me a finger puppet, my therapist in Chicago, and I just bought a bunch of them to be like my negative self-talk. And I just bought a bunch because I was going to send them to some people as thank you, but I have one here that viewers at home won't get. But it's just a little finger puppet of this little like demon with red arms and teeth. And this, if you assign like, if you, that nasty little voice in your head, if you like assign it a name and just like, or a persona, it can make it easier to be like, you're so dumb, Zach. Oh, you're not interesting or funny or cool at all. Then it can be easier to be like, okay, shut up, dude. Leave me alone.
I had like 12 of those growing up. I wish I still had those. Yeah. As soon as you held that up, I was like, holy shit, I think I had that exact one.
Oh, really? I just got a whole, you can get them on a little Amazon. I got a bunch of them.
That's awesome.
They're kind of fun.
I don't have a finger puppet, but I've been kind of trying to do the same. I basically think of it as like this inner drill sergeant that's just constantly shouting at me, you know, calling me a piece of shit, telling me I'm worthless, ignorant, stumbling buffoon that doesn't know how to navigate adulthood or life in the real world. And I'm trying to, much easier said than done, but think more in terms of like, okay, that's what I grew up with. I don't need any more of that. I need a gentle, kind, supportive voice that's kind of nurturing the innocent child that was so fucking stomped down and repressed, and you know, my identity was erased from me. You know, more of a nurturing, like, hey man, you're doing great, you got this, people like you, you're a good person, people believe in you, you're doing good things, you're a good dad, you know, like that's what I need. And it's so hard, and it feels, and it can feel very like, you know, corny or self-serving or I don't know. It's much easier said than done, but that's really what I need. I don't need that fucking drill sergeant anymore. He has not served me well at all. It's crippled me. It's really led me to a lot of hiding out and avoidance, you know?
And comedy, or like those, even you just saying those like mantras feels so, your like voice changed. It was so pretty to like have that voice. I feel like comedically our instincts are even to like undercut that.
Yeah.
And so you have to curb your own like darkest comedic instincts to like actually build yourself up. Because like whenever I encounter something like super earnest, I like want to make fun of it or poke fun at it or like subvert it somehow. But no, you want to tell yourself you're a good dad. People do like you. You are loved. That just like, I love, I know I should do more of those, and that would help in life a lot more. You can either quiet the bad voice, or you can make the good voice like louder and louder and louder. And laugh at the drill sergeant. I never quite got there, but if you can be like, oh, this guy again. Okay, we get it. I slept a little funny, and now you're like yelling in my ear. Go away. Like, come on. This guy
right.
again.
You're right what you said about comedy, though, because like I think that's largely a coping mechanism, is to kind of make snide remarks about things or undercut things, or, you know, cut your own legs out from under you before anybody else can. And,
100%.
And that, to a certain degree, I've realized has not really helped me either. And it's like, can I still be funny? Can I still do comedy while being kind to myself? I don't know if I can. You know?
I think you can.
Like what do I choose? Because it, like you said, it can feel to be kind and gentle and earnest. It's like, what are you doing, man? Come on, really? It's like this internal eye roll that I can find myself giving myself in a way, where it's like, okay, being funny is great. It's great to have, you know, clever comebacks or whatever, or you know, to nurture an inner wit, I suppose. But I'm starting to realize the value more and more of being vulnerable and real, and sometimes that can come off to a lot of people as new agey or corny or I don't know, masturbatory in a way, like, but it's like, that's okay. If that's how people perceive my attempt to kind of reroute this thinking, I know that's really what I need, because the self-hatred and the shame and the guilt for my upbringing has been so deep-rooted in me, you know?
There's I feel like sometimes I forget to make the joke and I just go off and I'm really earnest. But then I've learned, like, you can kind of get away with both. Like, you can be really earnest on stage and say, like, what you want to say, and then you just, like, make a little joke at the end and it's all justified.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good, like, example, but there's ways to get away with both. And I feel like finding a way to be funny through the earnestness is so human too. Or the vulnerability is huge though. Like, that's what's funny. Any kind of truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I used to be really mean and now I'm trying to be really nice to myself. But that's not as funny as when I was mean. Like,
Right.
That's funny. Or that already feels human.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the villain is always funnier than the hero, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm blown away by the bad boys of comedy. Like, they're so funny. Just like when they're clearly playing a persona and they're just like I'm amazing and I'm naughty. Like that, they make me laugh much more than like the good guy, the hero. Like, oh man, life's great. I'm like, that's less funny than like, this sucks.
You had another passage that you had a lot of fucking gut punches in this book, man, where you're talking to your dad and you say, I still want and I'm sorry, an apology for why I imagine burning in hell on turbulent flights after I jerk off and after naps, for why I have a hole in me so large only Christianity can fill it, for why my journey to find myself has been polluted with the poison of eternal doubt.
I don't know, what about naps? I don't know why. When I wake up from my nap, that's when I'm like, what is going on? Life is hell, or God, is this all real? What's going on? I'm gay? Is that okay? That's evil sin.
I woke up from this nap and I'm still gay? God damn it. So I could sleep it off.
Sleep it off. Just, 20-minute power nap.
Man, dude, I get it. I feel the same way. I think part of it too is because I felt like my childhood, my adolescent years were stripped away from me. I wasn't able to live them the way that other kids were. I wasn't able to experiment and make mistakes and fuck up and receive forgiveness or get some tomfoolery out of my system. Everything was so closely monitored and scrutinized that I feel like I'm still kind of making up for lost time. And when I do nap now, it's like, you're wasting time, dude. You had all this time taken from you and you're choosing to sleep in the middle of the day. Like, come on.
Oh, that's the drill sergeant.
Yeah.
Take you can have a nap. Jesus Christ.
Oh, Jesus. I know. And I
forget where I read, there's two ways to think about, there are two types of stories. There are pollution narratives and redemption narratives. Pollution narratives are things were good, something happened, and now they're bad. And then redemption narratives are things were bad, I made a choice, now things are good. And I guess if you think of your life as a pollution narrative, you're more likely to be depressed because you have no agency and like the past used to be great and you're like, you lost something. But if you think of your life as a redemption narrative, you have more agency and control and you're more likely to be happy. And what you were saying about like feeling like time was lost made me think of that, because your story is actually a redemption story where like something bad was happening. You're in this like cult that's telling you XYZ and making you feel bad, and then you chose to leave it, and now you're free and happy.
I'm getting there.
And the cult's in your mind, but compared to like, ah, man, my childhood was so great, and then all these bad things started happening, and now I have nothing or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. And then you're absolutely right. Like if I was able to tell 10-year-old me that when you're 40, you're going to live in New York City, you're going to have a beautiful wife and child, and you're going to do comedy for a living.
You got to leave her, man. You got to leave her.
You're going to be married to a beautiful ice cream sampling, unprintable, conniving misfit. No, but if I told myself then that I would have the life that I have now, I would not believe it. Because growing up and like I mentioned earlier, my mom's aspirations for me living at the world headquarters, I was pretty much, the best my life was going to be was pretty fucking miserable. I was like, I'm basically just doomed to a life of eternal misery. And so to be able to escape that and have what I have now, I never would have believed that was possible. But unfortunately, there has been that inner drill sergeant, a lot of self-pitying, be like, so much time was taken from you, so much time was stripped away. And it's like, am I going to continue to squander my life dwelling on what was taken from me? Or am I actually going to have some gratitude and appreciation for what I've actually been able to cobble together somehow and move forward? Like you said, it is a redemption story. Absolutely. And I would say, wouldn't you say the same is true for yourself?
I hope so. On the meanest days, it doesn't feel that way. But the other thing would be just thinking about utilitarianly, if that's a word. Like, yes, your childhood sucked, or our childhood sucked, but if hopefully maybe by like telling that story or intervening on some other kid's behalf or making other people feel seen, that can bring them some joy that maybe you didn't get as a kid. Or you're literally raising a kid and now don't do that to them. Or like, don't.
That's the best thing is like, is getting to do it completely different and like just leaning into everything that I wasn't allowed to do, like Christmas and Hanukkah. Like, let's just file on the holidays. He is half Jewish, but even if he wasn't Jewish, I'd be like, fuck it, let's get a menorah.
That's
let's
hilarious.
Do them all.
It's so weird. Doug's kid like celebrates Arbor Day, celebrates National Burrito Day.
National Burrito Day. There's another part where you talk about the harrowing night with the drunken twink. Is that what you call him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the next day he didn't apologize to you. He was like, that was a really weird night. And you had a passage where you said, I'm not a Christian anymore, so no forgiveness necessary. I love that.
Yeah,
love that.
There's some.
It's like you were like letting go of things that were so like instilled in you in real time. You're like, all right, I can drop this, I can drop this, I can drop this.
And it was petty.
Really cool. Yeah.
What like kind of sucks is so much of Christianity is probably close to a belief system I do have, minus the like Son of God stuff. Just like the idea that everyone is deserving of empathy and love, and there's some like divine light in us all, and there's something beautiful about being human. Or maybe that's a little more like Buddhism, or like we all have Buddha nature capacity for enlightenment. But during my pettier moments, I'm like, yeah, fuck that guy. Sometimes with my friends, when they're asking me advice, I'll be like, do you want Zach or do you want Buddha Zach? Which is like the ultimate version of like someone who sees compassion for everyone. Zach is going to take your side in every situation. Buddha Zach will be like, oh, maybe this person felt this way. They sound like they're in a lot of pain. But yeah, that fucking twink. I'm sometimes too empathetic, like across the board. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but like all I can usually be is really understanding of, just because my life changed so much. I'm like, I have no idea what anyone else is going through. It could be somebody's fucking birthday. Like, be a little sweetheart. Give them grace. Give the random person who's mean all the love you can. Delete that ego. If you delete your own ego, then like life's so much easier. Or, this is my new thing, if you can laugh at your own suffering, that's the keys to the kingdom. That is like funny.
Yeah.
If something like fucks up in your own life and you can laugh instantly, that's like the power that we have.
Sure. I agree.
Maybe.
No, I think you're right. I think my own self-pity has really gotten in the way of a lot of empathy, honestly. Thinking like, I'm so alien, I'm so alone, nobody understands my predicament. My upbringing was so unique. And then to talk to people like you, talk to people that grew up Orthodox Jewish or whatever. There's so many different religious extremist upbringings that you can put your kid through that just really fuck them up beyond all repair. Where it's really, I've had to really take a step back in the last few years and be like, okay, dude, you're not so unique. There's plenty of people that have gone through the same thing as you, tenfold, way worse, and come out the other side. So if there's hope for them, there's hope for you too. The thing that I think that cracked me up the most, you also made me cry at one point too, talking about your friend that went to Virginia Tech. That was, and the way that you talked about that, there was no like sentimentality. You didn't like prop him up as, you weren't like showering him with all these accolades. It was just kind of very matter of fact how your friendship with this guy unfolded, and you were kind of like, would kind of like rib each other. It wasn't like he was it was so devoid of sentimentality that when you dropped the bomb about him dying in the Virginia Tech shooting and that he was one of the ones that barricaded the door, it was like really, really, really well done, man. You were a fucking solid writer. I was blown away by that. And the fact that I got to hear you, I hate listening to audiobooks read by other people. The fact that, you were able to read that with the exact, gravity that it deserved was really powerful. But the thing that made me laugh the most was when you were talking about going to Princeton and hanging out with all these preppy kids and wanting to fit in. You came home and you told your mom, you're like, I need a bunch of Ralph Lauren polos. And she was like, they're $60 a pop. And she found on eBay a deal for 10 polos for $60. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And then so you were all proud of yourself, ready to rock it when you went back next semester. And you showed up and one of your friends was like, is that a bootleg Ralph Lauren polo? Looks like he's like leaning to the side.
Yes. Oh my God. It was so embarrassing. He's still like a close friend, that guy, but he definitely like laughed at me for it. Oh man. Yeah. I just wanted to fit in so bad there, but you can't. There was so much money there. I had no idea how wealthy some of the other kids were. I was just like along for the ride and trying to pass as not a total imposter.
I went when I was in when I was sophomore high school. Doc Martens were all the rage, like the tall ones, the 10 eyelet black lace up boots, and I was so hell bent on getting a pair of these Doc Martens that my parents brought me to the mall. And my mom was kind of like your mom, like would not spend a lot of money on clothes. She was like, this, Jinko jeans are $80. You get out of your mind? I'll get you 7 pairs of Union Bays from J.C. Penney's for that much. So I convinced her somehow to let me get a pair of Doc Martens. I remember going to the mall with them, and we went to like 4 different stores, and none of them had the Doc Martens that I was looking for. And I was so desperate to just get a pair of Doc Martens, just having the brand Doc Marten, that I settled for like these ankle high, like 3 eyelet shoes. They weren't even boots. They were shoes. And they weren't black. They were a color, the color on the box said ox blood, which is like a deep maroon color. And I could tell, like, as soon as I saw them and as soon as I tried them on, I was like, this is not what I set out to get. But they're fucking Doc Martens. Good enough, right? I will fit in just because they're Doc Martens. But they had like this real kind of bulbous toe. They were really kind of ridiculous looking. And I remember stepping into school the next day, and as soon as I walked in the building, some kid does a double take, and he just goes, "Hey, everybody, look, Doug's got fucking purple clown shoes." And everybody turned, and everybody pointed and started laughing at me. And they're my fucking shoes, you know? It's not like I could swap them out for another pair. So I had to wear these things for the duration of the school day with everybody laughing at my purple clown shoes. And then I went home that day, and my dad was in the Marines, so he had like a whole shoe shine kit, you know, all sorts of different polish and brushes and shit. And he spent like 2 hours trying to change the color of these shoes from ox blood to brown to no avail. Couldn't do it. And I wore them one more day, and everybody's like, those are still purple clown shoes. And I wound up just chucking them in the trash. So that
kids are ruthless. Anything to divert attention from them. It's like I've been watching The Traitors, some reality show, and it's just like, if you can get everyone to stare at somebody else, then they're not staring at you. And so, like, any deviation, any purple clown shoes, I'm calling out the purple clown shoes too. Did you wear them back the next day, or did you find something else?
I did, because they were a slightly different hue, but people weren't having it. That was it. I got 2 days out of these $100 docs, and then straight in the trash. But hey, man, congrats, dude. It's really great. I really loved it.
Oh, thank you.
And
it was a labor of love, and it's been so nice hearing different parts that resonate with different people.
Yeah.
Thank you for engaging with it.
It was great. And if anybody wants to give it a read or a listen, let me see if I can get, I was going to say, let me see if I can get the title right, but I pulled it up so I don't have to embarrass myself. Is it hot in here, or am I suffering for all eternity for the sins I committed on earth? Written and read by Zach Zimmerman.
By the author.
Yes. So congrats, man. It really is great. I loved it.
Thank you, Doug. And congrats on the pod. I hope it's reaching a lot of people that need it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so far it's resonating with the folks that I thought that I was hoping it would resonate with. And it helps to hear. It doesn't have to be Jehovah's Witnesses, like you are in a very similar predicament, and it really is helpful to a lot of people to hear that you can, like you said, there can be redemption. You can escape that mindset and move on to bigger and better things. So thank you for being so open and honest.
Let us pray.
There you have it, folks. Zach Zimmerman. Give him a follow on Instagram at ZZZZ. And make sure to check out his book, Is It Hot in Here, or Am I Suffering for All Eternity for the Sins I Committed on Earth? If you would like to check him out live, make sure to look for his tour dates. And if you are visiting New York City, Zach is a regular at the Comedy Cellar, so make sure to catch him there. Fantastic comic. Thank you for your support. If you're not following me on Instagram, at WhoDougSmith, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@WhoDougSmith. Please join the Patreon. If you're watching this, you've already done so. Thank you. If you would like to join the Patreon for full ad-free video of every episode, early access as well, please join the Patreon, patreon.com/JehovahBoy. And please email the show. I want to hear your story. JehovahBoyPodcast@gmail.com. Any sort of religious extremism, religious oppression, whatever it may be, Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientologist, Mormon, Hasid, whatever sort of hellscape you had to break free from or are hoping to break free from, please email the show. I would love to hear your story. I would love to share it on the air, anonymously, of course, so you don't get ousted and ostracized sooner than you're willing. But your story, as I can attest to, really can be a source of hope and encouragement to other people. So please email the show. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again so much for your support. Thank you to my producer, George. Make sure to give him a follow on Instagram at Dr. Photograph. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.